will bring you the world's first 747.
It's the early 1970s, and you are flying on a brand new plane, the luxurious 747. You can't believe what you see in front of you. The large airplane is as large as a 5-story building. No, larger actually. The airline? Pan Am, or Pan American World Airways. That is how I believe people must have felt when the first 747 flight with Pan Am took place. Now let's talk more about Pan Am, the unofficial national airline of the US. Let's talk about it. In January of 1950, Pan American Airways Corporation officially became Pan American World Airways, though the airline had begun calling itself Pan American World Airways in 1943. In September of 1950, Pan Am completed the $17.45 million purchase of American Overseas Airlines from American Airlines. That month, Pan Am ordered 45 McDonnell Douglas, at the time only called Douglas, DC-6Bs. From June of 1954, DC-6Bs began replacing DC-4s on Pan Am's internal German routes. Pan Am introduced the Douglas DC-7Cs on transatlantic routes in summer of 1936. Now, when I said DC-7C, and then after that said 7Cs, it might have sounded like I repeated myself, but no. The DC-7C was called 7Cs. That's a bit confusing anyway. In January of 1958, the DC-7C non-stop took 10 hours and 45 minutes from Idlewild to London, enabling Pan Am to hold its own against TWA's Super Constellation and Starliners. Pan Am considered purchasing the world's first jetliner, the British de Havilland Comet, but instead waited to become Boeing 707 launch customer in 1955 with an order of 20. It also purchased 25 McDonnell Douglas DC-8s, at the time still called Douglas. I keep on saying McDonnell Douglas because that's what I'm used to saying most of the time, but no, this is just Douglas. Anyway, it purchased 25 Douglas DC-8s, which could seat 6 seats across. The 707 was originally to be 144 inches, at least I think it's 144 inches, anyway, or 3.66 meters wide, with 5 abreast seating, but Boeing widened their design to match the DC-8s. Pan Am's first scheduled jet flight was from New York, Idlewild to Paris Le Bourget, stopping at Gander to refuel, which happened on the 26th of October 1958. The Boeing 707-121 Clipper America registers November 711 Papa Alpha carried 111 passengers. 320 Intercontinental series of the Boeing 707s was delivered in 1959 to 1960 and the Douglas DC-8 in March 1960, enabling non-stop transatlantic crossings with a viable payload in both directions. Pan Am was a Boeing 747 launch customer, placing a $525 million order for 25 in April of 1966. Now, you might not know this, but Pan Am was one of the reasons why the 747 was even built, as they wanted a plane with more seats than the 707. Fun fact. Anyway, on January 15th of 1970, First Lady Pat Nixon christened Pan Am Boeing 747 Clipper Young America at Washington Dulles, and during the next few days Pan Am flew 747s to major airports in the United States where the public could tour them. Pan Am's inaugural 747 service on the evening of January 21st, 1970 was delayed for several hours by engine failures, affecting the scheduled Clipper Young America. Clipper Victor was substituted for the flight from New York, John F. Kennedy to London Heathrow. Now, fun fact, if you don't know, Clipper Victor was destroyed 7 years later as it collided with a KLM Boeing 747, which was taking off from Tenerife in the Tenerife airport disaster. The deadliest plane crash ever, if you don't count 9/11, as that was several plane crashes. Pan Am carried 11 million passengers over 20 billion miles, or 32 billion kilometers in 1970, the year it introduced wide-body airline travel. Pan Am was one of the first 3 airlines to sign options for the Aerospatiale BAC Concorde, but like other airlines that took out options with the exception of BOAC and Air France, it did not purchase the supersonic jet. Pan Am was the first US airline to sign for the Boeing 2707, the American supersonic transport project, with 15 delivery positions reserved. These aircraft never saw service after Congress voted against additional funding in 1971. It would have been fun to see a supersonic American plane. I think Mustard has a good video about that. Anyway, Pan Am commissioned IBM to build Panamac, interesting name, which was a large computer that booked airline and hotel reservations, which was installed in 1964. It also held large amounts of information about cities, countries, airports, aircraft, hotels, and restaurants. The computer occupied the 4th floor of the Pan Am building, which was the largest commercial office building in the world for some time. The airline also built Worldport, a terminal building at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. The terminal was designed to allow passengers to board and disembark via stairs without getting wet by parking the nose of the aircraft under the overhang. The introduction of the jet bridge made this feature obsolete though, so not the best decision. Anyway, at its peak in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Pan Am advertised under the slogan, "The world's most experienced airline." It carried 6.7 million passengers in 1966, and by 1968, its 150 jets flew to 86 countries on every continent except for Antarctica, over a scheduled route network of 81,410 unobligated miles. I don't know what that means, but anyway, which is 131,000 kilometers. During that period, the airline was profitable and its cash reserve totaled $1 billion, a lot of money. Most routes were between New York, Europe, and South America, and between Miami and the Caribbean. Aside from the DC-8, the Boeing 707 and 747, the Pan Am jet fleet included Boeing 720Bs and 727s, which was the first aircraft to sport Pan Am rather than Pan American titles. So basically it just wrote Pan Am instead of Pan American. Anyway, the airline later had Boeing 737s, 747 SPs, Lockheed L-1011 TriStars, McDonnell Douglas DC-10s, A300s, and A310s. Pan Am had a financial interest in the Falcon Jet Corporation, which held marketing rights to the Dassault Falcon 20 business jet in North America. Pan Am also participated in several notable humanitarian flights, and at its height, Pan Am as well was well regarded for its modern fleet and experienced crews hired from around the world, frequently with nursing training. From 1950 until 1990, Pan Am operated a comprehensive network of high-frequency, short-haul scheduled service between West Germany and West Berlin. First with Douglas DC-4s, then with DC-6Bs from 1954, and 727s from 1966. This had come about as a result of an agreement among the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union at the end of World War II, which prohibited Germany from having its own airlines and restricted the provision of commercial air services from and to Berlin to air transport providers headquartered in these 4 countries that I said the names of just like less than a minute ago. Anyway, the airline's West Berlin operation consistently accounted for more than half of the city's entire commercial air traffic during that period. That's a lot. For years, more passengers boarded Pan Am flights at Berlin Tempelhof than at any other airport. Pan Am operated a Berlin crew base of mainly German flight attendants and American pilots to staff its German flights. The German national flight attendants were later taken over by Lufthansa when it acquired Pan Am's Berlin route authorities. In August of 1953, Pan Am scheduled passenger service flights to 106 airports. In May of 1968, to 122 airports. In November of 1978, to 65 airports. In November of 1985, to 98 airports. in November of 1991 to 46 airports. Pan Am had invested in a large fleet of Boeing 747s, expecting that air travel would continue to increase. It did not, as the introduction of many wide-bodies Pan Am and its competitors coincided with an economic slowdown. Reduced air travel after the 1973 oil crisis made the overcapacity problem even worse. Pan Am was vulnerable with its high overheads as a result of a large, decentralized infrastructure. High fuel prices and its many older, less fuel-efficient narrow-bodies airplanes increased the airline's operating costs. Federal route awards to other airlines such as Trans-Pacific Route Case further reduced the number of passengers Pan Am carried and its profit margins. By the mid-1970s, Pan Am had racked up $364 million of accumulated losses over a 10-year period, and its debts approach $1 billion. So they went from having $1 billion to owing $1 billion. This threatened the airline with bankruptcy. Former American Airlines Vice President of Operations William T. Sewell, who had replaced Najib Halabi as Pan Am president in 1972, began implementing a turnaround strategy, that being trimming the network by 25%, slashing the strong workforce by 30%, and cutting wages, introducing stringent economic and residual debt, and reducing the size of the fleet. These measures, aided by the use of tax loss credits, enabled Pan Am to avert financial collapse and return to profitability in 1977. And that's all. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.